welcome to episode 136 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is March 24th, and together with Robert and Goran, we are here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone. So, in several episodes in the past, we have talked about the SAP and Microsoft Teams integration. Recently, we highlighted the integration of SAP S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition into Teams, but we also talked about SAP SuccessFactors integrations, SAP Sales Cloud integration, and many more other SAP applications that integrate in Teams even today. So in our episode today, we wanted to take a closer look at the SAP Integrated Business Planning, or IBP, solution and the integration in Teams there. Because in the new version of 2303, SAP has developed a task-based integration in Teams. This now allows users to work on their IBP tasks directly from Teams. In order to show us how this looks like, I'm really happy to have my good friend Zolly and Zoltan joining us from SAP here today. But before we hand over to them, let's take a look at the news from this week. And I want to start with the Copilot announcement. So literally just when we finished the recording of our last episode last week, there was this Microsoft 365 Copilot event. And not sure if you have taken a look at this. It's a 30-minute presentation, the future of work with AI. But honestly, I think this is just absolutely amazing. The way how we are currently in the process of integrating OpenAI in Microsoft 365, in Word, in PowerPoint, in Excel, in Outlook. It's just, for me, it was absolutely amazing. I haven't tested it myself, obviously. I'm only parts of it I've already seen or tested where I could really do some of these things, but I was really impressed. And if you have 40 minutes, I can highly recommend take a look at this, take a look at some of the integrations, what we are thinking about. Let's see what happens. I'm sure some of the things will be not as good as what we are presenting here at the moment, but I'm also sure that a lot of other things will be just amazing and will really change the way how we work with Microsoft 365 in general. So speaking of OpenAI, we had this week actually the German-speaking SAP user group event in Germany, in Mannheim, and we had Jürgen Müller on stage, so almost 3,000 participants. Jürgen Müller was on stage, and it was really great to see that even there already Jürgen Müller talked about the integration of OpenAI, the latest GPT models on Azure, and how this works in combination with the business technology platform, how you can consume these OpenAI services from Azure and BTP, and then really start building new applications. So that was for me really fascinating to see that Jürgen Müller is already talking about some of the work that we are doing behind the scenes, obviously, with SAP on these integrations. And I'm sure we'll see more and more really cool integrations of SAP and OpenAI functionalities, similar to what Microsoft presented with Microsoft 365 and the Copilot there. Just moving on, this event was really amazing, also from a lot of other topics there. Our user group or working track, we have a track at this German-speaking user group here on SAP on Azure, and there we had a huge room actually, and even there we had lots of standing or people standing in the room because they wanted to learn more about SAP and Microsoft integrations. We had some really cool sessions from customers on how they use Microsoft and SAP technologies. We had a session where we talked about the support model, how Microsoft colleagues are sitting together with SAP colleagues in Walldorf or in St. Leon Roth and troubleshooting or helping with customer tickets. We had a really cool session by Martin Pankratz on Pro code development, how you can really use the SAP Cloud SDK for the business technology platform and use this in the context of Microsoft. So I think it was really an amazing event, and there's lots of cool scenarios happening that were created for this event, but that will also release obviously via GitHub and other channels to everyone to consume. Then moving on, SAP also announced Grow with SAP. So similar like or Rise with SAP. Grow with SAP is a new program that looks for I think new customers mainly and customers that are interested in using the SAP S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition. So to really help customers to get started with S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition, obviously in combination with the SAP Business Technology Platform and the different services that are available there on BTP. So I think similar like with Rise, where we also see a huge adoption, obviously then also Rise with SAP on Azure, obviously, or hopefully also with Grow with SAP, I'm sure that we'll see lots of customers really adopting this methodology or this program to run SAP S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition in their companies. Now, next thing was a nice blog post from the community about using Microsoft Power Virtual Agents, so the chatbot integration. In this case with S/4HANA on-premises edition, so not the cloud edition as before, but here Sheetal talks about how to use Power Virtual Agents to automate processes in the SAP system. So you have this Teams integration here about sales orders where you can walk through a Teams chatbot, and then again using Business Technology Platform, connect to your SAP system, and then just have another user interface in Teams to interact with your SAP system. So I think also a really nice scenario that leverages the benefits of the Business Technology Platform with the seamless integration into the SAP system, and uses in this case Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents to have the integration in Teams. Good. Then Bartosz is back. So Bartosz Jakowski, who has created all this great series about SAP on Azure on the SAP Community Network. He has now created or released a new blog post here on the tech community for the SAP CDC, so the Change Data Capture Connector, and SLT, so the System Landscape Replication Service, or whatever. It's the SAP Landscape Transformation Replication Service that allows you to connect to the SAP system, and then using the CDC connector to capture deltas, updates, creates with the data on the SAP side, and making this available in Synapse or Azure Data Factory. So another nice blog post from Bartosz that really outlines the required steps to connect your SAP system using SLT with Azure. The last one that I want to highlight is an upcoming event. So we talked about the Microsoft 365 Copilot announcement and the event, but there's another event for the Power Platform coming up, the Microsoft Business Application Launch event. And there's also a quick intro from Charles Lamanna. So he's the corporate vice president of the Power Platform. And I think he mentioned in this video that this will be the best, the most feature-filled presentation there, with lots of new releases for the Power Platform of this release wave 1. So I'm sure there will be lots of interesting announcement there during this event. So that's all that I had for this week. And with this, I mean, let me hand over to our two guests for today. Zoltan, Zoli, maybe you can quickly introduce yourself, what you're doing at SAP, and then I'm really looking forward to the presentation and demos that you have prepared.
Yeah, thanks Holger. Thanks for inviting us. So my name is Zoltan Biro. I work as a product manager for Integrated Business Planning, especially focusing on sales and operation planning related and development topics.
Hi, Holger and viewers. I'm Zoltan Farkas, the current architect behind the process management component of IBP, and I'm pleased to be here.
It's really great to have you. And Zoltan, I mean, we go way back. We had a very long history, and I'm so happy that you are here. I think it's amazing what you have done. I mean, obviously, I've seen some of the things already. Zoltan, you have published a few blog posts already on the topic. So yeah, I think this is a great integration. And I mean, as mentioned in the intro, we see this integration into teams in lots of different or with lots of different SAP applications. We had the S/4HANA integration highlighted also by Satya Nadella in his keynote, also on TechEd. And now I think seeing this with IBP, it's also really fantastic.
Yeah, indeed, it's a very interesting topic. It was really interesting for us to develop this and learn a lot of new stuff on the way. So I prepared a couple of slides to give you a little bit of background. What is the product that we are working on to have the right context? So I would try to go through this. So SAP Integrated Business Planning for Supply Chain, that's a very long name, so I just use IBP as well. It is basically SAP's supply chain planning solution. And basically allows you to create your digital twin of the supply chain in the system and then do the supply chain planning. And obviously you can do this from a strategic level spanning several years and making sure that you somehow combine these plans and with the strategic goals of the company, going down to a more tactical level several months ahead, and then on a short-term level, on a more operational level. You can see obviously that it's Fiori-based, but very important to note here, while you do the planning, a lot of simulation capabilities in there that you might recognize. This is a Excel user interface. So we actually already use Microsoft heavily here. We provide an Excel add-in in order to consume the planning data and interact with it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what else? So what is process management within IBP? So at the core of our supply chain planning process is the sales and operation planning process, and illustrated maybe here with one example. Basically allows you to come up with a sales forecast for your finished goods, and it's then later how do you fulfill this demand and create a rough cut capacity planning and also production planning, when and how much you will do production or procurement, what kind of inventory levels you need to have, how you do the distribution across your supply chain. And this is a complex planning process overall, involving many parties, as you can see in this illustration here, many departments of the company. And thus we wanted to have a kind of a process management capability where we bring the people and the data together in order to realize this planning process. And we have a lot of features, but I want to highlight maybe two of them. Obviously, you can model your business process, your supply chain planning process, break it down into steps, and then various activities that need to be carried out within that step. Some of them are automated activities like, I don't know, running a forecast, or could be manual activities carried out by the planners. But I want to focus a little bit more on social collaboration aspects that we built in the tool, and also a little bit task management, which is the focus of our integration at this point in time. So as mentioned, with collaboration, we wanted to enhance, because it's in the end a collaborative process involving many departments. We wanted to infuse our product with collaboration aspects, and so first we integrated with SAP Jam, and then later the successive product Build Work Zone came about. And this allows you to define so-called collaboration groups. Later were rebranded to workspaces, effectively building your communities and so that they can interact on a certain topic, work collaboratively on certain topics. These are similar entities like you have in Microsoft Teams called Team or Channel, where there is a dedicated channel for each topic. And we connected this to our process management capabilities. So for each process step that you define in your process template that describes the overall process, in each step, maybe a different community is involved. So we wanted to integrate and make sure that, the right community is getting the information that they need in order to collaboratively work and achieve the end goal. So, so you effectively can link certain collaboration groups or workspaces to process steps, and then tasks that are defined within that process steps are also being sent to these collaboration groups. So there is a freedom of choice how you interact with the tasks. It's either within our IBP environment. Also, the tasks are visible in this Excel-based front end as well, but also in Fiori apps, or you can access them via these collaboration tools. And obviously the collaboration tools allow us to do some other stuff like manage documents, share information, basically facilitate decision-making in the end and collaboration. And from various points of the IBP application, you can trigger the sharing of information to these communities. For example, when you are working with an Excel-based front end and you are updating the plan, maybe you can share it with certain community, or within the Fiori apps, you have an option to share it, and it will appear in the feed of that community. So that's the collaboration aspect, and obviously related to task, as I said, we wanted to allow freedom of choice. Where our users would interact with the task in order to collaboratively complete these tasks. And that's for Gem and WorkZone was working initially, and this is why we Teams came into the picture, because Teams is a very powerful tool. And you can also achieve the very same things. And as we already have an Excel front end as well, many of our IBP customers will have a Microsoft 365 license. So obviously in Teams, you can define the communities, share documents, leverage SharePoint, you have feeds. And we realized, okay, it has a nice, really native application called Task by Planner and To Do, where you can interact with the tasks. And then we came to this idea that, okay, let's look into Microsoft Graph APIs and see how we can replicate our tasks from the IBP system to the Microsoft 365 environment and let the users consume it via this native app. So obviously this is a good, very nice app that you can visualize the task also in a calendar format, or has charts and other things. So yeah, that's the history, how we came to the conclusion, okay, we would like to integrate with Teams. And as I mentioned, this is the first use case that we covered in the February release, the 2302 version. And on the left-hand side, you see the ways that you can interact either via Excel or Fiori apps with the tasks, but obviously in the Teams you can do the same. Let's say the most important use case is setting the task to complete, but obviously locally within Teams you have additional capabilities like commenting or attaching documents to a certain task, so that this collaborative work is enhanced in that way. And we came to the understanding of how the things are structured within the Microsoft environment. You have the teams, and then plans and buckets are used to organize the tasks. And we try to map this to our IBP environment. And in the end, we allowed let's say the IBP administrator persona within the process step to point to a certain plan and bucket where the task should be sent from IBP to be consumed on the team side. So this was the intro that I wanted to share. Do you have some question, Holger? And then I hand over to my colleague, Zoli, who will give the demo.
So I don't have a question, but just a comment, because I think with the whole task planning. I think even during the or past the pandemic, I think the whole collaboration is something that is super critical, I guess, because I guess in only very few places do you do this planning on your own. I mean, maybe you're an expert in some area, but you probably need to talk to other colleagues. You need to align with them what are their requirements and stuff like that. And that's why I think also the SAP Build Work Zone integration is a good vehicle to bring people together. But I like exactly this one where it's about choice then in the end. So one colleague probably is super happy in the SAP Fiori user interface. The next one loves Excel and wants to work with the data there from Excel. And the next one is happy in Teams. And maybe they jump around also between these different tools. But in your process, you're enabling them to work together across these different tools, always having IBP as the single source of truth, basically. So the central entry point where everything is tracked or everything is maintained. But then you have all these different user interfaces that empower the users to do hopefully their best work in the tools that they are most comfortable with. So I really like this story that you have presented here.
Yeah, and it's a good point that maybe I didn't came across so often. So you have these predefined tasks that are like reappearing in each planning cycle. If you have a monthly cadence each month, the planners will have to execute the same activities over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, there could be ad hoc collaboration happening between the planners as well. So you are able to define tasks on an ad hoc basis as the need arises. And then again, you could facilitate the collaboration. So maybe some colleague is asking the help of others to achieve a certain thing, or things like that. So it's embedded on process management, but also kind of ad hoc collaboration is facilitated by these collaborative work on tasks.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So Zolly, can you show us how this looks like?
Absolutely. Let me share the screen, and during the demo, I will switch off the camera to save some bandwidth if it's not a problem.
No, absolutely.
Okay, so let me share the screen and let me know when you can see it.
No, not yet. I think it was coming up, but maybe you can try again.
Yeah, let's do that again. Green.
Now it's coming up. And yes, now I can see your screen. Perfect.
All right, so let me give you a very quick demo of the integration first, and then I will cover some of the technical details of it, so how this integration was done. But before I do that, those who don't know what process management is, it is an IBP component used by customers to model their planning processes and automate manual tasks. So let's say I am the customer and I'd like to give this integration a try. So the very first question would be, when I make the switch to Microsoft Teams, what happens to my existing processes and their related data? And fortunately, the answer is your data is not lost, your data is safe, and you can even switch back and forth between supported collaboration tools at any time. So now let me activate Microsoft Teams as the collaboration tool to be used, and let's see what happens. To be able to do that, I have to use this global configuration application, and I have to look for the used collab tool parameter. And if I click on edit, here I can define to which supported collaboration tool IBP Process Management should connect to. Okay, so I'm running the latest bits here. So this dialog looks a little bit different from the one that is already released. In the 2302 release, customers have to enter the collaboration tool ID manually, which is error prone, but in 2305 and later, the customers will have the option to choose the collaboration tool ID from a combo box. Okay, so bear in mind, this is that bits, so that's why I can select the ID from a combo box. So now I selected Microsoft Teams as my preferred collaboration tool to be used by IBP Process Management. Let's save it. And now that we no longer connect to WorkZone, but to Microsoft Teams, that also means we reach out to a service hosted by a partner, in this case, Microsoft. So therefore, the IBP user needs to log into the partner network too to get the integration working. And I have to say that it was a real challenge to provide a seamless login experience, but we managed to pull this off because the user doesn't have to find a special application to log in or enter a special URL. Everything happens on demand. So when a user opens a process management application and the core needs to communicate with Teams, but the access tokens to the partner system are missing or expired, then the login flow is triggered on demand. So the user logs in and then the user can continue with the workflow. So let me show this to you. So let me go back to the Launchpad and open, for example, the Manage Processes application. And yes, so when you log in for, so if the user is not already logged in with the Microsoft account, then the user needs to enter the Microsoft Work Account ID and go through the usual Microsoft login flow. However, if the user is already logged in with a Microsoft account because the user used, for example, SharePoint services or whatever that needed a Microsoft account, then the credentials are picked up automatically and login happens in a second. So it's just a flash. But that's not the case now. So let's log in. So I'm going to enter my work account. Yes, that's very important. The IBP and the Teams integration only works with the Microsoft Work account, so it won't work with the personal Microsoft account. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right, so let's click next, and login will happen. And then I'm redirected back to the application I used before the login flow was triggered. So when you log in for the very first time, you will also have to give your consent to the application to do things in your name, but I've already given my consent, therefore the consent dialog was not shown. Also, my IBP user is now also mapped to the Azure AD user, and communication can happen without user intervention now between IBP and the Microsoft ecosystem. So as you can see, the WorkZone connected processes are still here, although they got disabled. So you can see the status column that is filled with the disabled text. And this is because they can no longer connect to WorkZone. Okay, you chose Microsoft Teams as your preferred collaboration tool, so the connection is live to the Microsoft ecosystem and no longer to WorkZone. However, you can still open these processes, check their statuses, see the steps and tasks and Gantt charts, process feed, whatever. Okay, so the data is still there. And since we switched to another collaboration tool, we have no processes and templates that connect to Teams yet. And of course, it would be really cumbersome to recreate process templates manually that use Teams. So just imagine that you have process templates with 50 steps and with all sorts of automation conditions, jobs and alerts and tasks. So you as a customer could say that Teams integration is nice on paper, but it would be a huge effort to recreate everything from scratch. So thanks, but no thanks. So therefore, we made migration of templates really easy. Okay, so let me show template migration to you. For that, I need to use the Manage Process Templates application. And also let me pick a more or less realistic WorkZone connected process template and migrate it. This is very simple. I just need to copy it, or I could just migrate it in place if I wanted to, but we don't recommend that. You should only do that if you are sure that you don't want to go back to the previously used collaboration tool and you would like to stay with Teams. But anyway, in the end, whichever option you choose, you will need to assign the Microsoft Teams collaboration groups to the steps they will connect to and make the task group tasks. So let's do the migration. So I open this WorkZone connected process template. So I'm going to create a copy of this template, and let's say, yeah, this is a Teams template. So I just renamed the copied template. And what I said, I need to connect the steps to a related Microsoft Teams hosted collaboration group. And you can see in Microsoft Teams that I have a team called Solution Validation Team. I have a plan called solution validation tasks, and there are 3 buckets in this plan called demand, supply, and reconciliation. So you can see that during the copy, all the data was taken over from the original process template except the collaboration group. And the reason is that, yeah, we no longer connect to Workzone but to Microsoft Teams. So you have to connect this step now to a Microsoft Teams plan and bucket. So this is the demand review. So I'm going to use the demand bucket for that. And as mentioned before, you also have to change tasks that are not group tasks to group tasks. And the reason is that Microsoft Teams only supports group tasks. And actually, we could make the changes for you automatically, but the change, so changing a shared task into a group task, that's a big change. So actually, you have to confirm that you are okay with the conversion. But the conversion process is really made super easy. So you just have to select a task that is not a group task yet. You have to click edit. And as you can see, we already checked the checkbox for you. You don't even have to do that. You just have to confirm the change by pressing the update button. Okay, and this is what you have to do for all the steps. So here is the supply review step. So I'm going to use a supply bucket from Microsoft Teams. And here the tasks are all group tasks. So we are okay here. So let's apply. And the very last step, I need to connect this reconciliation review to another bucket. Fortunately, we have the reconciliation bucket, so I'm going to use that. And yeah, now the template is migrated, so I can just save it. And once it's saved, now I can create a process instance from this template that will use Microsoft Teams just by clicking the create process button. Okay, so let's save the process instance. The system is saving the instance. And now that the instance is created, let's say we are ready to start this very first step, the demand review, and also work on the assigned task. So let's change the status of this step to in progress. Well, all I have to do is to press this button, mark as in progress. And what the system is doing now, it is creating the task instances in IBP and also in the Microsoft ecosystem via the Microsoft Graph API. Okay, so now the step is in progress. And if I switch to Microsoft Teams, you will see that the tasks are also there. Sometimes I just have to refresh because, so reload tab. And you can see that the tasks are also here. All right, so to showcase the integration even further, let's make some changes to this task, review annual operating, whatever. And yeah, let's just set the progress to in progress and maybe add a new assignee. So let's assign myself to this task. You can also change the priority if you want to important. It really doesn't matter. And now let's see what happens on the IBP side. So if I open the process again, and then open the step that was changed to in progress, then I should see what is expected. You can see what happened. Okay, Olga, this is just, I've tried it many times. Okay, so maybe you could just cut it out. So yeah, let's refresh again. Maybe it's a synchronization issue. So now if I open, yes, okay. Maybe I just did it too fast.
Now we can see it in progress, yes.
Yeah, now the status is in progress, and you can see that instead of 1 user, now 2 users are assigned to this task. By the way, I like to mention that I didn't have to install any SAP provided extension to Microsoft Teams to leverage the integration. I could just use the standard Microsoft provided environment. And also, it's very important to note that in Microsoft Teams, I can assign Azure Active Directory users to the task. But in IBP, you can see IBP business users assigned to the task counterpart, so this one. So this means that Azure AD and IBP business user mapping just happened behind the scenes seamlessly. And I think it's pretty cool. Okay, so far data creation was initiated by IBP. Okay, but let's see what happens if the user creates a task in Teams. So let's switch to Microsoft Teams. And yeah, I'm going to add a task. Let's call it SAP on Azure. And let's set the due date to Monday. Doesn't really matter, and assign it to myself. Add task. So now the task is created in Microsoft Teams, but since our time is limited, I will show this newly created task in the IBP Excel plugin instead of the Manage Tasks application. So let me log into G5R, that's the system I'm using. And yeah, I need to log in. And once login happens, I will be able to see my tasks, including the task that was created in Microsoft Teams, the SAP on Azure task. So if I click on this button, you can see that this task is indeed here. So I can use Excel, the IBP Excel plugin to complete this task. Okay, so yes, let's complete this task. And once this is done, after a while, it will also be completed in Microsoft Teams. And I think you could see in the background that, yeah, this task was put into the completed task group. Okay, so we just scratched the surface of this integration, as I did not show automation and a lot of other features, but I guess you got the point what this integration is used for. And now let's take a look at some high-level technical details. Okay, so I'm going to show you, since this is a blog for developers as well. So let me remind you that this is an extremely high-level figure. Mm-hmm. So the entire landscape is more complex than that. Okay, so in the middle, you can see IBP and this process management component, which is again used by customers to model their planning processes and automate their manual tasks. And on the left-hand side, you can see the clients that can either directly or indirectly connect to IBP to manage process management objects. So in the IBP Excel plugin, you can manage your tasks in a limited way, so you could complete them, but that's it. But we also have the Fiori applications to manage all aspects of processes. So customers can even connect process management with a collaboration tool if they want to use collaborative features like commenting on tasks or handle file attachments, manage tasks, and so on. But let me mention here that clients like the IBP Excel plugin or the Fiori applications do not connect to collaboration tools directly. Okay, their backend is always IBP, and it is IBP that dispatches the task data to the configured collaboration tool. Let it be WorkZone, Jam, or now the Microsoft ecosystem. So to get the IBP Teams integration working, you need to register an application in the company's Azure Active Directory so that process management can connect to the Microsoft Graph API. And registering this application actually establishes a trust relationship between process management and the Microsoft Identity Platform. And don't forget, you also need to add certain permissions to the application so that process management can access the required resources. Let me show that to you. So at the moment, we don't use many permissions, but as you can see, for example, to be able to create, modify, read, use a task, you need to use this tasks read write permission, or actually we need to use, and you have to assign this permission to the registered application. Okay, so don't forget about that. So let me go back to the video figure for a brief moment. And you can see these two lines here connecting to the Microsoft Graph API. So why do we provide two communication scenarios? So process management invokes the Microsoft Graph API endpoint either in the name of the application or in the name of the logged in user. And we invoke the Graph API in the name of the application when we need to be able to access resources independently from a user. I don't know, maybe, for example, like reading email addresses of Azure AD users. We also invoke the Microsoft Graph API in the name of the logged in user. So when user context really matters, for example, when we want to create a task in a Teams plan and bucket, then user context is really important because various users have access to various things and plans. So it's important to know what the user is, who the user is, okay? So therefore, we provide two communication scenarios. So one is used when we need to communicate with the Graph API in the name of the application, and it uses a client ID, client secret credential for that. And the other communication scenario is used when process management needs to communicate with the Graph API in the name of a user, and it uses open authentication access and refresh tokens. So you need to create the communication arrangements from both of these scenarios, okay? And users have to go through the login flow I just showed you some minutes ago. So let me also show you in the system how you set it up, how you set up the connection on the SAP side. So first, you need to create new communication systems for the communication scenarios, and you do that in the communication systems application. And all you have to do is to create a new one, and there's a convention that you enter the name of the communication scenario we provide. So SAP COM 0864, for example, in this case, that will be the communication system for that communication scenario. And when you create it, obviously the host name needs to be Graph Microsoft Com. That's the easy part. But then how do you set up the open authentication settings? So if I go back for a brief moment to the visual figure, it's IBP and the process management component that communicates with the Graph API. So requests are going out from the process management component, and therefore you have to set up the outbound or the client settings. Here we need the authentication endpoint and the token endpoint. Fortunately, it's very easy to get these URLs from the Azure portal, because all you have to do is to go to the application registrations, and there is an endpoint link here, and you can just copy the authorized endpoint and just paste it here. And also the token endpoint can be copied from the Azure portal. Now we are almost ready with the communication system. Since we have an outbound communication, we also have to define a user for that. And in this case, you have to use OAuth 2.0, and then you have to enter here the OAuth 2.0 client ID. That can be copied from the Azure portal too, and also the client secret, which can be generated as well in the Azure portal. But be careful, because the client secret can only be seen after the generation. If you navigate away from the page on the Azure portal, then you will no longer see the client secret, and there is no way to to get the secret. So that's how you set it up. And once I'm not saving it because I have this set up already. Once the communication system is set up, you have to create communication arrangement, and you do that in the communication arrangements application. You just have to click new and then select the communication scenario we provide for the Teams integration. Don't forget, we have two communication scenarios. One is the 0864 and the other one is 0865. So yeah, let's use, for example, 0864. And Then you have to select the communication system you just created for the scenario. And in that case, it was SAP COM 0864. And then the outbound communication settings are taken over. And the very last thing that you need to do is to enter the /v1.0/ as the path. And then you are ready to go. So when you save it, the backend will run a so-called deployment body implementation, and it will fill in the gaps. Okay, so for example, in case of delegated permissions, we'll also set up the OAuth client and backend to use access tokens and so on. So I guess that's it. That concludes my demo. And do you have any questions?
Thank you, Zoltan. And I will keep this small refresh glitch. You're just too fast when showing your demos. No, I think this is really, really great. And I do want to highlight one thing that you briefly mentioned, that there's really no additional installation required. I mean, to connect your IBP system to Teams, all the configuration is done here in the browser. So that's something that I found really interesting. And you showed some of these nice wizards or screens that help you to set up the trust, that help you to set up the configuration between IBP and Teams. And I think this is really something, yeah, that's very easy to configure and set up. I guess. No, the starting point here was really that you had it not connected to Teams, right? So and you guided us in, I don't know, 10 minutes through the process to connect more or less to Azure Active Directory, to Teams. And then I obviously love the fact that these tasks popped up in Teams, that you could interact with them directly from Teams and then write back the information or update the information back to the IBP system, or even the Excel integration. That was a really nice scenario that showed these different components and how they really interact with each other. So I think for me, it was a really nice scenario that you showed.
Thank you. I'd like to add two more things here. You mentioned the IBP Excel plugin. And even though I mentioned that during the demo, the IBP Excel plugin also doesn't connect to the Microsoft ecosystem directly. So it's very important that it's the process management backend component that dispatches the task data to the configured collaboration tool, let it be Verizon Jam or the Microsoft ecosystem. So this way, we barely had to modify the client applications we have. We didn't even touch the IBP Excel plugin because the magic happens in the backend.
Nice.
And therefore, we can even add more collaboration tools in the future if there is a need.
But that's also really cool. Yeah. So you didn't need, or if I'm a customer that is already running the IBP plugin into Excel already today, there's no need for me to update anything there. I would just,
yeah, that's correct.
Nice. Cool.
That's correct. Yeah. And I also wanted to mention, if I may, you can cut this out if you want later on, that it was really a challenge to do this development, not because of the communication setup or the API is not documented or something like that, not because of that, but we have task data, but we also support multiple collaboration tools. So we had to map all the terms what the Microsoft Graph API provides to IBP terms, and also we had to ensure that these terms also map to existing collaboration tools we support, like Workzone or Jam. Right. So, and we also wanted to reach feature parity with Microsoft Teams integration. So it's not like, yeah, this is something you cannot do in Teams. I would say 99.9% of the features are there. Yeah. So it's really a uniform implementation. And we really struggled a lot with, Zoltan also mentioned that for example, in Microsoft Teams, you have a 3-level hierarchy. So you have teams, and then you have plans, and you have buckets.
Yeah.
But that's not the case in Workzone and Jam. there the hierarchy is just 2 levels deep. So you have a main collaboration group and then a subgroup. So how do you map these together? How do you make it seamless integration that still this hierarchy can be somewhat or somehow mapped? Yeah, so that the integration works. Because we also didn't want to implement different logic for these collaboration tools. So we have a uniform synchronization logic. Yeah, because process management should only see this is a task coming from somewhere. It doesn't matter if it works on Jam or Teams or the Graph API, to be more precise, right? It's a task. So yeah, having a uniform implementation, that was really the key point here. So that if there is a bug, then the bug is everywhere, and we fix it once, and we don't have to implement different synchronization logic for each and every supported collaboration tool. We have to have a uniform core, and only the communication that is different, but the communication interface itself. So you can see these 3 arrows. The interface is the same. You say, okay, I want to create a task in the configured collaboration tool, but it doesn't matter which one it is. It's the task of the specific task handler implementation that actually in the end handles the communication between IBP and the collaboration tool to transform the uniform task data into a collaboration tool specific format so that it can be created, read, updated, deleted, and so on.
Actually, if I may add to this, so to draw a parallel, so also like the process management backend is the single point where the tasks are handled, and it doesn't matter the collaboration tool. In the Microsoft ecosystem, the Graph API is like the single point, and even though that we demonstrated here the Teams and this native app task by Planner and To-Do, you can consume the task, right, also in Planner or other Microsoft tools or products where the task appears. So it doesn't have to be necessarily Teams. So although we always stress Teams in our communication, but it would be the preferred tool for the end user. Maybe it's not Teams, maybe it's Planner, and the task will show up there.
And that's a beautiful example, and I think this also shows how well thought through all of this is. So this is the Teams integration is not a quick hack or something like that, where you're saying, because I think that's something, Zoltan, that you could have done much faster, but you really put a lot of thought in this. How does it work together with the current implementation, with the current integration in WorkZone, in Jam, and so on, so that, as you said, there's one single place where you potentially need to fix a bug, and then it's fixed in all these different collaboration areas, and it's not a one-to-one hard-coded connection to one place, and then the integration in WorkZone and Jam is something completely different. But you really leverage the existing architecture and made sure that this is the foundation for potentially also exposing the tasks to other UIs as well.
Actually, this is the new architecture. So here's the 2211 and prior. That was pretty simple. You can see how simple this is. But here, we only had to worry about WorkZone and Jam. And basically, they provide the same audit service interface for us. So whenever collaboration was enabled, the backend logic, this huge monolith here, assumed that the communication is always WorkZone or Jam. So everything was together. And from 2302, I re-architected the whole stuff. And now we have just one synchronization logic, common interfaces, and only the communication differs. So now it's an extensible part. You can see that now everything is chopped into smaller blocks. And
beautiful.
It's much nicer now.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Zoltan, Zolly, thank you so much for the demo, for the presentation. I'm really impressed on the level and the details of the integration, and also the look behind the scenes. Really the look at the architecture. Zolly, thank you so much for guiding us through this. I really hope that we'll see lots and lots of customers that are using this kind of integration. I'm sure there will be lots of feedback from the customers of additional integrations and additional scenarios, but it looks like from an architecture point of view, you're very well set up to also consider additional customer feedback, I guess.
Yeah, and speaking of additional scenarios, I had 2 more slides, but we can just talk through it verbally. So we want to do very similar things as well that we have seen in S4 delivering recently. Like you can share kind of an update to your planning community via a team chat or channel. So that's also on the roadmap for us as well, so in IBP. Also for as you are doing the updates via this Excel add-in, as I showed, maybe you can notify your planning community that the plans have been updated, but also in other cases, more closely connected to our process management capabilities, where we have sort of a process feed where various updates related to your process are being sent to the right people. So these people could also consume these notifications later in a Teams channel. So that's also on the roadmap that we, send these updates. Okay, the process step status has been changed, or I don't know, a background forecast job has been completed, or these kind of updates will also happen through Teams later on. So I also look forward to that, and hopefully our customers will also do.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So lots of new, additional exciting things happening there as well. Perfect.
Yes. And we are aligning with other SAP teams, how they did their stuff, and learning from each other, and hopefully this will speed up the delivery and the development process for us.
Fantastic. Good. Well, again, thank you so much for joining our podcast this time. I'm really excited about what you've shared, and maybe, who knows, maybe next time when there's additional integrations, it would be great to have you back on the show to talk about some new additional features that you have created.
Yeah, we'd be happy to share that with you and your viewers.
Great. Then thank you so much. Have a nice day, and we'll see each other next time. Thank you.
Thank you again. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.